I am such an awesome guy. I make so many videos.
Hello there, Price of Reason here with a movie review. Those of you that have been watching this channel for a while probably know that I was one of the first YouTubers to review the movie Sound of Freedom upon its release, which then went on to become a surprise international box office hit. In that review, I also talked about media company Angel Studios, who had distributed Sound of Freedom, and why I believed that their business model was an industry game changer. You see, as opposed to more traditional Hollywood studios, Angel Studios raises money for their releases through equity crowdsourcing, which is exactly how they produced their new movie, The Shift, starring Kristoffer Polaha, Neal McDonough, Elizabeth Tabish, and Sean Astin. Now, just to clarify, even though I always like seeing smaller independent media companies like Angel Studios disrupting the Hollywood system, while doing a review, the only thing that really matters to me is if the movie is any good. In this video, I will be discussing the general plot and premise for The Shift without going into major spoilers, what I liked about the movie, what I didn't like about the movie, followed by my official score. The Shift starts off with our protagonist, Kevin Garner, a Wall Street investor losing his job at Bear Stearns somewhere around the year 2008. Depressed, he sits at a bar and meets Molly, a woman who he ends up marrying and having a child with. As we jump forward in time, it seems like Kevin's life is rather miserable. He's working a job he doesn't like, he and his wife are having problems, and his son is no longer with them. As he's driving home one day, he's involved in a car crash but seems to wake up in a more grim alternate universe where he's approached by a shady figure known as the Benefactor. Throughout this movie, this alternate universe where people have no hope keeps testing Kevin's beliefs, and the Benefactor ultimately leads Kevin to make tough decisions regarding his life, his family, and his future. Let's start with what this movie gets right. First of all, I like the concept, which is, in a nutshell, a retelling of the Book of Job using a modern-day setting in science fiction. And although this type of hybrid concept could be seen as unconventional, I think that this idea certainly has merit. I would even go as far as saying that out of all the movies that we've seen in recent years that featured a multiverse idea, The Shift uses it in a way that's probably the most thoughtful and meaningful. And yes, that includes Doctor Strange and the Multiverse of Madness and Everything Everywhere at Once, which is very overrated in my opinion. In addition, I like that this movie is very ambitious because producing any movie, let alone a 2-hour sci-fi film, is already no easy task, but for Angel Studios to produce The Shift for only $6 million, it's basically mission impossible. This movie is the very definition of a shoestring budget production, but it makes the best of the resources it has available. The cast is solid, especially seasoned veteran actors Neal McDonough and Sean Astin. The movie is competently shot and directed and has an overall feel of a more expensive production than what it actually is, and that's no easy feat. I also like the overall story here as it focuses on the human experience and the meaning of hope. And while the Access Media often likes to remind people that Angel Studios is a faith-based company for whatever reasons, I think that the more spiritual themes explored in this movie can be appreciated by people of all backgrounds and beliefs. Still, even with the good things that I've mentioned, I also have to be fair and say that the movie does have some noticeable issues. For starters, I would say that it's uneven. While I think that the first act of the movie does a good job at setting up the overall story, and that the third act provides the story with a satisfying resolution, the second act of the movie feels unfocused at times. If I had to explain why, I would say that it's because when you create a sci-fi alternate reality, it has to have a clear set of rules which the audience can understand and follow. If this isn't executed in the best possible way, it can leave viewers confused as to what exactly is happening. For me, when Kevin is in this other world, there were parts that I wasn't fully sure what the movie was exactly trying to do. Still, on the bright side, it wasn't dumb like in Doctor Strange and the Multiverse of Madness, or completely nonsensical like in Everything Everywhere at Once, but I do believe that a more tightly written second act would have really tied this film together and taken it to another level. Also, and perhaps it's because of its second act, the movie feels like it's about 15 to 20 minutes too long. Now, while these issues are not negligible, it's still important to recognize that this is basically a small indie movie production. Unlike Disney, Angel Studios simply doesn't have hundreds of millions of dollars to throw at every movie for its initial filming or any significant reshoots. I suspect that if they did have larger budgets, they probably would have been able to present a more polished final product. But you know what? Even with its flaws, I enjoyed watching this movie, and I could appreciate the story it was trying to tell and the way it was trying to tell it. And it's interesting to see that even though the Bible was written thousands of years ago, a movie like The Shift shows that its stories and themes are still relevant today, which is why so many people can relate to them. And I think that's also the reason why this movie has heart and an overall positive message which people can connect with. Just recently, on a panel on Midnight's Edge After Dark, we were discussing how with a budget of one big Hollywood franchise film, you could make about 50 smaller and more meaningful indie movies, and at this point, I would actually prefer that. Because even when big studios try to tackle more spiritual issues like Disney's $200 million flop Wish, they end up drowning the movies in modern-day Hollywood social justice agendas and completely missing the mark. That's why I'm rooting for a studio like Angel to keep growing so it can continue to provide some type of counter-programming to the more corporate, creatively bankrupt, and lazy projects coming out of Hollywood these days. And as they grow, I believe that Angel Studios will have additional resources available that will make their future productions a bit more polished. At the end of the day, I think that as a movie, The Shift does what it sets out to do, and in comparison to so many other movies I've seen this year, it's both interesting and different, even if imperfect in parts. If I had to give this movie a score, I would give it a 7 out of 10. What did you think about The Shift? Did you love it? Feel free to let me know in the comments, and if you enjoyed this video, please consider subscribing to my channel and also clicking on that wonderful notification bell. Thanks for watching, my friends. Thank you, and good day.
I am such an awesome guy. I make so many videos. From